Welcome, everybody. It's a great privilege and pleasure for us to welcome once again author, international, interdimensional commentator, Messianic Jew. Is that something I can say?
Yes, you can.
Ella LeBain. And Ella, our topic has kind of been shifting, but I think I'll express it, and you can correct me if I haven't captured it, because it's such a shifting topic. But number one, what is the origin of the Jews or the Hebrews? Because there are all these versions floating around. Number one, are they good? Are they evil? Number two, and why is it that the Father would have designed a world in which the Savior, Jesus, is a Jew, and yet the Jews are they're like, the last thing that they want to do is admit that the Messiah is a Jew. You know, it's like this conundrum. So over to you on those questions. Thank you very much.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me back. It's always good to talk to you, Alfred. And those are really great questions. And let's see, let me start by unpacking. Okay, the Hebrews, which last time we talked, I think we went into this a little bit about Atlantis and how there was a group of extraterrestrials that were called Huvids or Huvas, or and the V and the B are the same letter in Hebrew. So, you know, it's just a matter of like which, pronunciation, and that's how these words got into our lexicon. I mean, I'm married to a Brit, so he says potato, potato, I say potato, it's that kind of a thing. So suffice to say, the Hoovers were the Hebrews. Okay, so we could start with that as an extraterrestrial race that existed on this planet during the times of Atlantis. And that's relevant to everything that's happening now, because there's cycles within cycles. And the last time we had an age of Aquarius, which we're coming into, we're at the end of that's what the end times are all about, the end of this processional age of Pisces. And when we finish this, which is within this century, we will enter officially into the age of Aquarius. And the last time we had an age of Aquarius was during the times of Atlantis and Lemuria. So things come back full circle. So that's a point. I'm just going to leave that like a dot. We're going to connect, right? And then, so there were floods, as everybody knows, and the Bible starts off with the first flood, which is the sinking of Atlantis, which Dake's Bible calls Lucifer's flood, because Lucifer was the king of Atlantis and he lost his kingdom. Okay, so the Bible, today's Bible that we're dealing with, begins with Genesis 1:1, the Spirit hovered over the waters of the earth, which was after that first flood. And all this stuff can be proven with the archaeology, the forbidden archaeology, as well as the history and Plato. So suffice to say, that's another dot. Then we have the second flood that came later, and we call that the floods of Noah, right? So in between those two, there were the Elohim, which means gods, plural in Hebrew. That's what it says. They repopulated the earth, and the earth was already populated. This wasn't like brand new, first time. It was a recreation. It was a restoration of human beings. And there was a conflict, and I prove all this. You can't make this up, because these were scriptures and scrolls that were omitted and deleted from today's Bible canon by the Church of Rome. And they're the first and second books of Adam and Eve, which go into a lot of detail about the Evademic race. And the Evademic race was a race of humans that were repopulated after the floods of Atlantis that lived to be 900, 1,000 years old. I mean, it says in the Bible, you know, the oldest living recorded man was Methuselah, who lived to be 969. And there's every chapter starts off with this one begat that one. So we know that this whole litany of genealogies, and people lived to be much older. Okay, maybe they, you know, didn't age as much as we do, but this is all part of a curse. Okay, so what happened between the beginning, after they restored the earth, after the first flood, and after the second flood of Noah? Huge change genetically. And, you know, in my opinion, I say that it was a genetic manipulation, a genetic downgrading, which goes against, you know, what a lot of people think, that the ETs came to help us and uplift us genetically. But the record shows that we went from living to be like 960 to be like, if you're lucky with your telomeres and your health, to be 120. Most people don't live beyond their 90s anyway, right? So something happened in our genetics that caused that first group of humans, which we call the Evademics, and then after Noah. So Noah was part of the Anunnaki kings. He was like the last of those kings, and there was like hundreds of thousands of years of them. Okay, so there was a group of beings that these lords overlorded over. That's and suffice to say, the God of the Old Testament, the God of Israel, okay, whose name is Yahuwah, okay, set apart a group of beings from Noah, okay, from the bloodline of Noah. That's why he saved Noah and his family. And you know, they were mixed with other, you know, because remember, they all went on the ark, and it wasn't just Noah's sons, it was Noah's sons and his wives. Okay, so that whole grouping got saved, and then he recreated humans again, and then they were downgraded. So that group of beings that came from Noah, which there's a lot of commentary about, like who Noah really was, and a lot of us who look at this and connect it to the Sumerian believe that he was the last of the Sumerian kings. Okay, so he had this bloodline that they saved, and that ended up becoming what we call today the Israelites and the Jews. Now let me even break that up one more level. So it goes into Jacob. So the story of Jacob, so it was Abraham, Isaac, and then Isaac's son was Jacob, and then Jacob had 12 sons, and one of his sons was Yehuda, which we call Judah. So there's no J in the Hebrew language, it's all Y. So the Y is always the J, just like Yeshua is Jesus. The J doesn't, you know. So he was blessed by the God of Israel to be and given this huge swath of land that spanned the entire, you know, Levant, Mesopotamia, cradle of civilization, that went from, you know, North Africa all the way across to, you know, even Syria and, you know, Jordan, Egypt, all of Israel, Lebanon, up and down, okay? And he blessed them with this land, his sons. So Jacob had 12 sons. One of his sons was Joseph. Joseph was the golden child. Joseph married an Egyptian princess, okay? So his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, became they became two of the tribes because he got the double blessing. So Joseph had two portions of land. So he basically gave it to his sons, who were, let's face it, mixed, right? If he was married to an Egyptian princess. my point is that these are the Israelites. Okay, these were the tribes of Israel that began the nation, the land, the kingdoms of Israel. And they were kingdoms because they tell us there was a north kingdom and then there was a south kingdom. And the south kingdom had the tribe of Judah. And that's where we get the word Jew from. Okay, so Yehuda is Yehudi, which is the English word Jew. Okay, so not all the Israelites were Jews, but they all practiced the same faith, the same religion. So the genetic tribe and the religious beliefs sort of merged. So this is why today there's a difference between people who convert to Judaism that are maybe not Jew by bloodline, by race, but they're Jewish by belief. It's a religion, right? But there's a difference between, and I want to put this like, think of it on a board. There's a difference between the Jewish religion and the Jewish race. Okay, so like for instance, me, right? I was, raised Jewish. I was born, with a Jewish father. I was sent to Israel. I was given an education. I learned Hebrew, and they sent me to Israel to get an education. I came back with Yeshua. Okay, Jesus, and I was excommunicated, cut off from every one of my Jewish family and friends because I believe in Yeshua and I believe that Jesus is the Messiah of the world. So not just for the Jews, he's for everybody. So why can't they see that? And why did God show that to me? Well, very young, I was orphaned. So I was kind of out there, and I believe my mother, who died when I was 6 years old, probably prayed for me. And one thing that the Lord is known to do is answer the prayers of mothers and grandmothers. And I believe that was why he showed himself to me at a very young age when I was 18, when I came of age, when I became like an official adult. So, it hasn't been an easy road, but he's confirmed to me multiple times in all these years. I mean, I'm 63, so I've had a lot of experiences that he's alive. Okay, so that is the gospel truth. He is alive. It's not about, all the other stuff. It's that, when Mary Magdalene, she was the first evangelist, she was the first, messenger to tell everyone he was alive. And that's otherwise we wouldn't be talking about this if he was just another dead man on a crucified on a cross like thousands of others that the Romans did. Fact is, he was resurrected and he's alive and he still is today. And people can still have contact, close encounters, communication, salvation, deliverance with him. Okay, so my life is a testimony to that. So being a Jew who believes in Jesus, being excommunicated, the Jews will say, well, I'm no longer Jewish. And I've had that. And I'm like, well, according to my DNA, I am. Because I went and I had my DNA checked. It was like, where are my roots? Where does my father and there's all Middle East, my mother was Italian. There's all this Middle East stuff. So it's like, I can't change my DNA. It's like telling a Black person that once they come to believe in Christ, they're no longer Black. They're still Black. They just believe in Jesus. I'm still Jewish. I still believe in Jesus. That doesn't mean that I, follow everything. I've never really been a religious type anyway. You know what I mean? I'm more spiritual. So this is an ongoing issue with the Jews. Let me just underscore that. And why don't do so this is another thing, and I just want to like unpack this. If it weren't for the Jews, there would be no patriarchs, there would be no apostles, no Bible, and no Messiah. So the prophecy about who the Messiah is and who Jesus was and is, Yeshua, is that he had to come through this very specific bloodline. And the Bible is very clear about that. There's really not a whole lot of ambiguity in it. He had to come through the bloodline of David, okay, King David, which again came from Noah. All right. So what the Jews were chosen for was to be set apart, okay, from the rest of the other peoples of the earth, the pagans, the Gentiles as they were, to carry the knowledge forward. It was all about, holding on to knowledge and being responsible for it and being set apart to live for God, to live for this God of Israel, who we call Yahuwah, whose son is Yeshua. Okay. So that whole bit about being like the chosen people, being chosen for anything, created dissension, created jealousy. Okay. So the root of all anti-Semitism, this Jew hate, this ancient Jew hatred that goes way back to the Old Testament times, is rooted in this jealousy. Okay. And this is a known thing. Nothing new under the sun there. So, but here's what happened. I mean, just to like put it in a nutshell, is that the group that was chosen for Yahuwah, they got tempted to go after other gods. There were other gods. And I proved this in my second book, Who is God, that there were other gods in the Bible, and that the God of gods, how do we know who the Almighty is? How can we distinguish the Almighty from this other group of gods with a small g? Is that he had the power to punish these other gods. Okay. So if you're the top dog and you're like the one who gets to set the rules and punish those for breaking those rules, then that puts you, you have sort of a supreme authority, right? Would you like, just agree with, with that? So we see that in the book of Exodus, in the Passover story, because the plagues, the 10 plagues, were, each one of them was a punishment to the 10 major gods of Egypt. Okay. And, Egypt was polytheistic. And this is an ongoing spiritual religious battle from deep antiquity about how the earth was going to govern, how the humans were going to govern themselves, either through monotheism or polytheism. And you can go back and look at the ancient Egypt, like the pharaohs, and when Akhenaten came along, he was like the oddball, because every pharaoh were all polytheistic. So the God of Israel is monotheistic. Zoroastrian was monotheistic. Akhenaten, he inserted into the Akashic record the concept, the idea of monotheism before it actually sort of like took hold, because it happened, a little later. So these are issues, spiritual battles that humans have had to deal with from deep antiquity. So this is important to understand why Jews don't accept Jesus. One of the reasons, there's several, and that has to do with monotheism. They have been, basically indoctrinated from the get-go that there's only one God, and even their prayers even reiterate this. The Shema Yisrael, there's one God, and we're all one through one God, and there's only one. I mean, that's basically what it says. And so Jews were punished severely, okay, for going after other gods, for these pagan gods. And all the stories are in the Old Testament, and they had the land and they lost it twice, okay, because of this severe punishment by the God of Israel. all right, because he was not going to share them with these other gods. So that's like number one sin, iniquity, the iniquity of the fathers, they call it, deep rooted generational curses, okay, that go way back. So, and it goes down the bloodline. And this is the stuff that Yeshua came to heal. He came to restore the bloodlines. He even said his own words, he's come for the lost house of Israel, okay, to bring them back. So why don't the Jews see who he really is? Because they've been, well, there's so many reasons here. Let's talk about implants. Okay, they've been implanted to believe through this reptilian energy, because it's the reptilians that are doing the implants. All right, reptilians, the Greys, they've been using them for millennia, and they implant this into the bloodline, and then people are born, and they just keep reiterating the same thing, making, having even the same patterns. Psychologists call the generational curses, psychologists call family excuse me, family trance. Okay, so like the psychologists say this is a family trance, when the whole family has the same problem, it's the same pattern, nobody wants to do it, they're in denial, they don't want to do anything about it, yet it keeps repeating itself through everyone who's born. Okay, and then it turns into illness, right? Because all illness comes from some type of sin, iniquity, transgression, and there's different levels of it. So these, suffice to say, become curses, and he came to break the curses. He said so. So it says in Galatians 3:13, cursed is the man who hangs on a tree. So he hung on the tree. The cross was basically a tree. What was that all about? It was about that he became the curse so that we can be free through him. Why? People say why. And this was one of my big things that it took me years to figure this out. Like, what's the big deal? What is the obsession with blood? Okay, why is blood such a thing? What's up with the blood sacrifices? So through the Old Testament, they're constantly sacrificing animals, right? And the high priest, they do this thing with the lamb and the goat and the ram and the this and the that. How can the blood of an animal cover up the sins of humans? But that is Judaism. That's ancient Judaism. And that's what they did in not only the first, but the second temple. And when they lost the second temple, which was in AD 70 by the Romans, and that was because of what happened with Yeshua, because no one, he became the final blood sacrifice. So why was a blood sacrifice even necessary? To pay the ransom, okay, to the God of this world, who is Lucifer, Satan. Okay, so and Jesus, in his own words, never even argued that. The story where he went into the desert to Nahal Sin, which is where I went to school, by the way, in Sde Boker. Nahal Sin was down that wadi. I didn't know that until after I left and I started reading the New Testament. But and that's where I saw him first. That was the first appearance, was in 1979 in July in the Negev at Sde Boker. So that 40 days in the desert, he went and fasted, and it says he was tempted 3 times by the devil. The devil came to him, and one of the things, the big temptation was, if you bow down to me just once, it just takes once. It's like a mafia thing. Just kiss my ring once and you have all the power, right? And that was the kind of thing he said, if you bow down to me once, all these kingdoms of the world, and he showed it to him in visions, will be yours. Did Jesus argue his authority to do that? No, he didn't. He knew that he was the God of this world. The Bible says he is the God of this world. He is the prince of the powers of the air. And that is the number one reason why Yeshua, who came from another kingdom, because he kept saying, my kingdom is not of this world, I am not of this world, extraterrestrial, that he had to come and redeem and save all of us, okay? Because we're all being held hostage in many ways, okay, by the God of this world. So everyone who gets saved, okay, Jew, Gentile, black, white, doesn't matter, are all saved behind enemy lines, right? We live, and this is why the end of the age is so pivotal, because it's a change of kingdoms. The kingdom of heaven is coming to earth. I mean, that's the good news. This whole world and everything in it is going to end the way we see it. The planet will continue. The earth is going to renew itself as it's done many times, and it's going to go through a lot of changes. It's already going through it. But the kingdoms are going to change. Okay, this is pivotal because it's not only the change of a precessional age, which is a 2,160-year cycle, it's the change of the whole entire, 26,000 year cycle coming full circle. That back to that age of Aquarius, and the last time we had that was during Atlantis, when, and so why is it even relevant? Because of how this prophecy ends. So the prophecy ends with the new Jerusalem, which is the holy city, it says, the city of heaven, the city of God, coming out of the heavens, okay, and landing and laying over a scorched earth with 12 gates, each one named after the 12 blessed tribes of Israel. So I discern and distinguish this in my fourth book, Covenants, which is all about where did the tribes of Israel go? Where did these lost tribes end up? And they're all over the world because there were two diasporas. The second diaspora, which happened in AD 70, everybody had to leave because of what happened with the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire is also pivotal in understanding all of this. Okay, why the Jews don't accept Christ, who the Antichrist is, and how it all ends. They play a starring role in this end time prophecy because the Antichrist comes out of them. Okay, it comes through the revived Roman Empire. That's what the prophecy says. The book of Daniel is very clear about who this end time prince is, and he's called a prince. He has many names. There's like 50 different names for him. But one of the things that it says that he was going to do, or already did, is change the times and the seasons and the laws. And the Roman Empire, the Church of Rome, already did that. You and I are living on this Gregorian calendar, right? Today is May 22nd of 2024, and it has absolutely no astronomical or astrological relevance whatsoever, right? Okay, the months don't even coincide with the lunar cycle or even the solar cycle. Why? Because the Roman Empire did that. Why do you think they did that? They did that to get people off the being resonant with the natural order of things. And it says that the Antichrist changes that. So that's one thing that's already happened. All right. That doesn't mean he's not going to, when the final Antichrist emerges through this end time war against Israel, something else is going to happen too. A lot of things. It's the prophecy is horrific. The prophecy is your worst nightmare. Okay. And so far, to date, we are seeing it unfold like a script that was written down 3,500 years ago, 33,000. So the book of Daniel, and it's interesting because Yeshua quoted from Daniel multiple times. He endorsed it. He talked about it, just like in Daniel's vision. And why Daniel is so important is because it tells us of this battle, of this spiritual warfare that was happening at the time of Daniel with King Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon and all of that. Okay, and that was the first empire. So the Bible is very clear about these empires. So there was the Babylonian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire, basically three. Okay. And then the fourth one, the vision that he had was that iron was mixed with clay, which was basically the Roman Empire part two. Okay. And when you look at the map, okay, of all the nations that used to be under Roman rule in the first Roman Empire, those nations are now Muslim. Okay, they're all Islamic nations. So the prophecy actually names them. They're and almost all of them go by the same name, except a few. They've changed their names, like Persia is now Iran, Timon is now Yemen, Edom is Jordan and Palestinians. So a lot of people get confused about who are the Palestinians. This is an ongoing controversy about, oh, free Palestine. You know, I'm writing, putting my sixth book out there, and all this is in it, which should be out by the end of this year, God willing. But the word Palestine was coined by the Romans. So when the Romans oppressed Israel during the times of Christ, okay, and Jesus said, not one stone is going to be left here, and he was right, because what collapsed the Roman Empire was Christianity. All right, let's face it. But they never really completely got dissolved, because they just went into the Roman church, the Church of Rome, which, you know the history, Europe and England and everybody fought against, but they're still there. Okay, and now they just call themselves the Vatican, which is Latin for divining serpent. Okay, and there's no secret. This is not a secret conspiracy. They're right out there worshiping Lucifer. They do it in the Mass. You can listen to it on YouTube. They do their Latin Mass in Latin, and they call on Lucifer. And I thought to myself, what happened here? How is this possible? So I went in and saw that what happened in the history was when the Pope asked Jerome, who's now known as Saint Jerome, to write the Bible in Latin, he basically went into the Hebrew scriptures and mistranslated a very key passage. And that was Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, which is specifically about the being who we all call Satan, all right? Who in Hebrew, Satan means adversary or rebel. But only once, this is mentioned once in the entire Bible and never again, does the Lord call this being by this particular name. And it's kind of a derogatory name. And he calls him Halel, which in Hebrew literally translates to he who boasts in a foolish rage. So, and then he does these 5 I wills, because he wants to elevate himself above the Most High. I will do, he doesn't want to just take over. He wants to be above him. Okay. So this is like, he's literally waging war on the God of Israel. Okay. So when Jerome went into that passage, he misinterpreted, mistranslated, whether he did this purposely or not, just because, he wasn't Hebrew, didn't understand how the linguistics worked. And he put the Latin word Lucifer, which literally translates in Latin to light bearer, okay, someone who bears light, to the word Halel, which is all about this arrogant, boastful, raging rebel. How is that light? Okay. And they believe Lucifer is Christ. All right. They do. That's just what they are. That's why in Catholic churches, you have crucified, you have Jesus hanging on crucifixes in a Catholic church. Any other church, any other Christian church, you don't see that. You just see crosses. Nowadays, in today's Vatican, the Pope assembly, there isn't even a cross, let alone a crucifix. But this, why do they do that? Because they want to keep people oppress. It's a psychological symbolism that keeps people in victim mentality. Because in voodoo, when you nail down anything, it thwarts their power. So the Catholics, the old Catholics, Catholicism didn't really come in until 1000 AD. That's why I always refer to them as the Church of Rome, to distinguish between the Catholics, because they wanted to become like, the true Christians, but they still never repented from the mistakes of the Church of Rome. Okay, they are Babylon. All they did when Mithras, when Constantine, let's go back to Constantine. In 350 AD, Constantine's Creed established the official Roman policy, and back in the Roman Empire, religion and government policy were one. There was no difference between the two. Unlike here where we live, we have a separation of church and state. So people don't, they go, okay, well, you can believe that, but we're going to follow this. Back then, everything was together. And Constantine, in Constantine's Creed, established replacement theology to the Jews, because remember, they were ruling over Israel, they were oppressing the Jews, and which every word of Constantine's Creed is the doctrines, the official church doctrines of anti-Semitism. Okay, they were actually threatened with exile, to be anathema to Rome, if they followed after the God of Israel, if they followed the Sabbath the way the Jews did, if they followed after the feasts of the Lord, okay, which they called the Jewish feasts, which are really not Jewish feasts. They belong to the Lord, because it says that when he returns, he's going to keep doing that. And so it's not just exclusive to Judaism, all right? Which is why a lot of Christians who start reading all of this stuff, and they go, oh, okay, well, I guess I have to, it's about God. It's not about the Jews. I have to honor Passover. I have to honor these different appointed times, as they're called, because they will be in the millennial reign. It says so. And it says that anyone who doesn't honor them doesn't get rain. Okay, so this is not about the Jews. This is about the Lord. This is about God. So suffice to say, that is number one reason why Jews do not accept Jesus, because of what the Church of Rome did to the Jews. The Jews cannot forget that. They've been persecuted for rejecting Christ since the times of Christ. However, okay, let's not forget who started Christianity was the Jews, okay? Because the early church were all Messianic Jews. Okay, every book of the Bible is written by Jews. All the disciples, all the apostles, they were all Jews. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't say all Jews are this and all Jews are that. They've never really been on the same page. I mean, Rodney Dangerfield, he used to say, put two Jews in a room, you get 10 opinions, because they're diverse. There's 12 tribes, okay, of Israelites. So anti-Semitism is this ancient Jew hatred that goes way, way, way back in the past. And let's start with the Philistines. So the Romans called the land of Israel Palestina in Latin, which was after the Philistines, because back then the arch enemy of Israel were the Philistines. And where did the Philistines hang out? What was their swath of land that they ruled over? The Gaza, what we call today the Gaza Strip. So it was the Romans who started that word, the Palestina, which became Palestine. And it was always the Jews were the Palestinians. Okay, when the British gave the Balfour Declaration, when they ruled, they called it Palestine because of it was passed down from the Romans. So when they gave it, in November of 47, when they went and did the vote in the United Nations to give that land as a place where Jews that were being persecuted in Hitler's Holocaust in Europe to go to have a safe place, to have a place to go, to get away from the persecution, they were the ones who gave them that land. And when they got it, they restored the name back to Israel. Okay, so Israel is older than Palestine. Israel goes way back to Jacob because Jacob became Israel. So remember the story where Jacob is wrestling with this angel, right? The angel comes down out of heaven and he wants to go back up the stairway. They called it the stairway to heaven, which is basically a spaceship and the stairs to a spaceship. And Jacob's holding on to this angel and he's saying, well, I'm not letting you go until you bless me. And he's struggling with him and he's wrestling with him and he gets hurt in his hip and he limps for the rest of his life as a memory for that struggle. So the angel finally turns around and says, okay, from this day forth, I'm going to call you Yisrael, which means he who struggles with God and survives. And that is where Israel comes from. So Palestine is Philistine. So the Romans called it that to stick it, to humiliate the Jews that they were oppressing during the times of Christ. And that's where it started. So when people say, it's ironic, okay, let's put it that way, that when people say free Palestine, free this, it's like, well, they were the original Jews. Okay, and I'm not going to argue that the people who identify as Palestinians today aren't somehow connected, because they are. They're all cousins. They're all part of the same ball of wax. But this is more than just a dispute over real estate. This is a spiritual warfare. This is happening in another realm, and these are just the players on the ground. Anyway, I've talked enough. Do you want to ask a question? Does that make
sense? Yeah. I mean, you have raised so many deep questions. I want to ask two questions because they're just the ones that kind of jumped out at me, if that's okay.
Of course.
When you start talking about the Antichrist, the final Antichrist, and that really jumped out at me because one of my recent books is called Tracking the Antichrist. And there I kind of talked about the many public candidates for the prophesized global Antichrist emerging in a postmodern era, looking at the spiritual remote viewing tests of chapter 13 of the book of Revelation. And the chronography deep state, sentient AI, artificial intelligence, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, Nostradamus talks about an MBS, Donald Trump, there's a whole thing about Donald Trump being the Antichrist, the Rothschilds, the Pope, you talk about the Vatican, Prince William, Vladimir Putin, King Charles III. There's a whole book written called The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea, the Chinese Communist Party, the false second coming of Christ. Those are kind of tracking the Antichrist archetype. And I'm wondering whether any of that resonates with you and whether you think that the Antichrist has yet appeared among us. Over to you.
Well, all great questions. So according to the Bible prophecy, and that's the only thing that I could really talk about, is that this final Antichrist is this biblical Antichrist, and there are no coincidences. you and I can agree on that. We have synchronicities, but not coincidences, because that's just, that's like saying it was an accident. It's not an accident, it's planned. So what's planned in the Islamic prophecies for their Mahdi, and what's prophesied, planned, written down 3,500 years ago in the Judeo-Christian Bible for this end time Antichrist, seems to be the same character. Okay. Joel Richardson wrote a book about this, proving this scripture to scripture. So for people who really need to see the scriptures that come out of the Quran and that are compared to the today's Bible, that is a really good reference. I myself am not going into that depth, but I am making comparisons, okay, based on the geography and based on the prophecy of Daniel. Okay, so the prophecy of Daniel says that there's going to be 10 nations that wage war against Israel. The end time war is against Israel. And I really want to unpack this for you, because this is very important to understand that one, if you can see that this was planned, that this was prophesied, that this was put down and written down 3,500 years ago, then that tells you something about time and the timeline and who the God of Israel, who stands above the timeline. So if he can be above the timeline and look at the past and tell you what's going to happen in the future based on millennia, right? That tells you something right there, okay, in terms of authority of scripture and authority of this prophecy. Because so far, every single one of these pieces have already been fulfilled, except for this last chapter that you and I are talking about, who is the end time, the biblical Antichrist. So it says that the biblical Antichrist comes out of the war of Gog and Magog, which is the end time war against Israel. So you have to pair Daniel 9 with Ezekiel 37 and 38 and 39. So let's just talk about Ezekiel 37 for a minute. So Ezekiel 37 is basically the prophecy of the valley of the dry bones. We used to sing about it in school. Those bones are all connected. This bone is connected to the, right? Remember that? So that prophecy, that whole entire chapter has been fulfilled. You can hit a big check mark on that. Done. All right, on the prophetic calendar. And it was fulfilled in 1948 when the Jews returned to the homeland of Israel. Mm-hmm. Okay, because it literally says in the prophecy, the valley of the dry bones, which were dead Israelites in Israel. The Lord told Ezekiel, now I want you to prophesy over these dry bones, and I'm going to tell you that these bones are going to live again, and I'm going to put flesh on these bones, reincarnation, carne, flesh, and I'm going to breathe my spirit back into these bones, and these bones are going to live again, and I am going to raise them up to be a powerful, strong army again. That's the prophecy. Okay, so that's that. And then 1948, Jews returned to Israel, and that was the beginning of that prophecy coming true, as well as the beginning of all eschatology. So eschatology is the study of end time prophecy. But before that time, any Christian scholar, theologian who was looking at any of this stuff couldn't really say that this was actually happening, because none of that had happened yet. Plus the fact, big fact, that 1,800 years from the second diaspora, from 70 AD to 1948, Israel was in a drought. Okay, so even Mark Twain went to visit the land of Israel, and he was like, there's nothing here. It's just a big desert. There's nothing going on, because it was under a curse. Nothing could grow. It was under a drought. Nobody really wanted to live there. The only people that were kind of living there during these years were Bedouins, which were they're nomadic tribes. They're just moving through with their goats. They don't stay in one spot for too long. And because of the British mandate, they they used they used people who lived in the surrounding neighborhoods, okay, of Israel, which was Jordan and Egypt and even Lebanon, and offered them jobs. The British employed these Arab neighbors to come and work for them under the British mandate. And that's what was going on before they gave that land back to the Jews through the Balfour Declaration, through the UN Declaration, which is what they've been trying to undo ever since. So there's been all these wars. Okay, so suffice to say that when the Jews got Israel back, they were attacked by their neighbors right away. Okay, so they had to fight against the Egyptians. They had to fight against the Jordanians. After the 73 war, they made peace. They made agreements with Egypt and Jordan. So, and this is very interesting because when you look at the end time prophecy and the cast of characters that go against Israel, Egypt and Jordan are not part of it. Okay, and neither is Saudi Arabia. And there's no coincidence that Saudi Arabia was getting ready to enter into the Abraham Accords with Israel, Egypt, and Jordan in September of 23, and then October 7th attack happened on Israel. And they attacked, and let's not forget, Iran, okay, who is ancient Persia, has been funding Hamas, Hezbollah, Daesh, ISIS, and all these extreme Muslim radical jihadist groups. Those are facts, okay? So they use them as proxy wars against Israel. But for the first time ever in our known history that you and I have been alive on this earth, has Iran ever attacked directly Israel and Saudi Arabia? So in the Bible, it's Arabia. Now it's Saudi Arabia. Same thing, just because it's run by the Saud family, right? So that's the same land, Mecca. And the prophecy says that Persia destroys Mecca, destroys Arabia by fire. So we can suffice. So what does that mean in biblical vernacular? Biblical speak is basically a nuke. That's basically some missile. And what did they just do? They attacked. They sent missiles directly, like 300 of them, from the land of Iran to the land of Israel. Direct attack, first time ever. Okay, and what did they do a month ago? They also attacked. Saudi Arabia, which is why Saudi Arabia looks to America for protection. All right, so we have all kinds of agreements with the Saudis to protect them, which was evidenced by the official diplomatic political envoy when Donald Trump was president, and he was invited by Benjamin Netanyahu to come and visit Israel. But he said, you know what? Don't come to me first. Go see the Saudis first. Okay, honor them first. Show them that they're important. And that's what he did. He flew from Washington to Saudi Arabia. They put out the red carpet. They gave him everything. And for the first time ever in the whole history of the Middle East, the Saudis opened up their airspace to allow a plane to go from Saudi Arabia directly to Israel to carry Trump to Israel. So these are all like end time game changers about the relationships between these nations and the relationship for why this 10 Islamic coalition, which the Bible calls the 10 toes of that iron mixed with clay statue, which is the revived Roman Empire, which are all now Islamic nations, wage war against Israel. So Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia are not part of it because they
Okay,
are in,
yeah. Now, this is kind of paradoxical. If I could just ask you this, okay? And this gets to some, but first of all, let's go to Yeshua, okay? Jesus, Yeshua, okay? And this is where, as I understand it, Jesus, Yeshua, incarnated as a son of God, not as a God. He is a son of God, not as a God. So he would not be a God. He would not be in competition with the Jewish God, with the Hebrew God, because he's a son of God. Over to you. I
that is,
just want to make that
yes. Oh,
distinction.
Alfred, that is a very good point, very good distinction in terms of scripture. A lot of Christians believe Jesus is God. Let me just put that out there, okay? That he is the creator. And there's evidence of that throughout the scriptures because of what we call Christophanies in the Old Testament. Those are the places in the Jewish Bible, the Torah, where Yeshua shows up thousands of years before he was born. Okay? Because when he was born, when he was alive, he said, before Abraham was, I am. Okay? So he's been around forever. He incarnated. He had to go through that. That's every bit of his life, from how he was born, where he was born, in the house of bread. Bethlehem means house of bread. Didn't he say he is the bread of life? Every single aspect of his birth, his life, his ministry, his death, his resurrection is all prophesied in the Torah. Why? And your original question, why don't Jews see that? Okay, short answer. They're under a veil. Okay, under a veil. So I was raised in that. I was indoctrinated with those beliefs. But God pulled the veil off of me. So I now can see that they're under a veil. All right. And thank God I'm not the only Jew on the planet who believes in Jesus. I mean, out of the 1971 Jesus revolution that started in San Francisco, they made a movie about it last year, came Jews for Jesus. They're headquartered in San Francisco because they saw it too. And it came out of the drug revolution, your era, the hippie stuff. And they have been trying to get this message across to Jews since then, that you don't have to convert to Christianity to believe in Jesus. Jesus was Jewish, and there's nothing more Jewish than Jesus. This is what they say. I believe that too. He was a Jewish rabbi. Okay, so but there is a reason why Jews reject him. Not all Jews, because there's a especially since the pandemic, the numbers are like growing. And that's another part of the end time prophecy. There's two parts of this prophecy that Jesus himself said had to happen before he returns. One, the Jews have to return to Israel. Two, the Jews have to return to him in Israel, meaning that once they're there, they have to say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Okay. And that happens at the end. Okay. Well, okay. So Antichrist gets in the way. All right. But he's part of this grand plan. And let me answer your original question. Okay. The reason why God put this into the plan is to prove an eternal point, okay? That who the real Messiah is, who the real God of Israel is, who the real God of the heavens and the universe is. And because there's been so many competing gods, which has created a lot of confusion, a lot of delusion, a lot of battles, a lot of jealousies, a lot of counterfeits, you name it, okay? It's the original Game of Thrones, all right? And this is the end game that is coming up, that this being that is called a prince, the prince of the prince to come. And so let's, if I could just divert here just a little bit to this Prince of Persia story, because it's so important to understanding who the biblical Antichrist is. So in the book of Daniel, was asked by Nebuchadnezzar to interpret his dream. And the angel Gabriel, who is the messenger angel, he's the communication angel, you know, and he wanted to give Daniel a download, all right? But he couldn't, because he's in this territory that the Prince of Persia rules. So this is like sort of like spiritual bureaucracy, if you want to think of it that way, and like a hierarchy that had to be acknowledged because of these authorities, these powers and principalities in place, these rulers. So let's not forget, we war not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, rulers of the darkness of this present world, and spiritual wickedness in the heavens, which are aliens, okay? And the rulers are these archdemons. So you've got archangels and archdemons. Both of them represent princes. So Gabriel had to get this message to Daniel. This is in the book of Daniel. People could read this. It's not, it's very clear. He had to get this message to Daniel, and he couldn't because the Prince of Persia was blocking him, because he's the ruler of that land. So what did Gabriel do? He went to the archangel Michael, and he asked for help. He said, I need to get this message. You need to hold back and restrain the Prince of Persia so that I can get this message to Daniel. So he did. So Michael comes on the scene, first time, only time you see this in the entire Bible, and this is very revealing of the relationship between us and the angels and the archangels and how this whole hierarchy works. He comes in now. Michael is put in charge of Israel. That is his job. He is the archangel that the Lord put in charge of guardianship over the land of Israel, and has been, and it's never changed. So that's who he is. And his word, his name, Michael, means who is like God. So he's like the top guardian archangel. So he comes in, warrior angel, and he comes in and he battles with the Prince of Persia, okay? And they wrestle, okay? Like you can imagine, like a drama, like a whole sort of superhero type thing going on with all their superpowers. And he wrestles with him and he restrains him temporarily. Enough time for Gabriel to come in, give the message to Daniel, so Daniel can give the message to the king, and he can get free. And then they freed the Jews, and all of that. So that's history. But what's interesting is how these powers work. And there's nothing new under the sun. And just because that was ancient doesn't mean it's not still happening now. That's my point. Yeah. And Prince to come, it has to do with the Prince of Persia. All right, because the biblical Antichrist, it has a lot of descriptions and a lot of names. And one thing I can tell you with certainty, I can't tell you who he is. I can tell you with certainty that he comes through the revived Roman Empire. So we know that and we also know that the Vatican, because the prophecy in the book of Revelation is very clear that the Church of Rome is the false prophet.
I
Okay.
see.
So the Church of Rome, and it says the whore. Okay, so let's talk women now, female stuff. Okay, so whenever this is biblical speak, biblical vernacular for church is always a female. So you're either the virgin, the bride, or you're the whore. Okay, so in the book of Revelation, the whore of Babylon is the Church of Rome, because it says very, very clearly that the whore who sits on 7 hills, Rome sits on 7 hills. And it goes even further to describe the garb, the costumes, the pearls, the colors, the purple, the scarlet, the pearls, the hats, all the stuff that is their religious attire, all comes out of Babylon. So basically, if you look at the history, Rome took over everything. They brought the Babylonian religion to Rome.
Right.
Okay, so they never changed that. Constantine, when he was faced with, because he was one of the emperors of Rome in 350 AD, and he sees this vision when he goes to battle of this cross in the sky, which I believe was a spaceship, and he thinks, okay, well, he's fighting. He wants to envelop, the whole world under Roman. He's the emperor. He wants to rule the world. And what's happening on the ground after Christ died, after the second diaspora, after Israel was destroyed, after everybody went in all these different directions, after the Roman soldiers all realized that they killed Christ, the Romans killed Christ. The Jews rejected the Pharisee. This is a very important piece of history, and it's a fact and it's a truth that Jews have been persecuted by and used as a whipping, thing over their head over and over again. Oh, the Jews killed Christ. They didn't. They reject the religious Jews, the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin rejected him. Okay, they were part of a conspiracy to get rid of him. They were threatened by him. They were threatened by his supernatural powers that they didn't have. They wanted to hold on to their power, okay, as the high priests, because they had to live under Roman rule, and that was as far as they could go in the land at the time. And they didn't want some guy coming along and upstaging them, and which is what he did, because they couldn't do what he did. They couldn't heal the sick. They couldn't raise the dead. They couldn't do the miracles that he did. Let's not forget, like, the fish, the miracle of multiplicity, where he had, the loaf of bread and the fish and fed 5,000 people from it. Okay, all those 5,000 people, all those Israelis, all those Jews, they all believed in him. So there was thousands of people in the land of Israel at the time of Christ that followed him. They believed he was the Messiah. But because of his unique mission, he was not, and the Jews believed that the Messiah is going to come and deliver them from the oppressors and save them from their oppressors, who were the Romans. Like, come on a white horse out of heaven and sort of rescue them from the oppressors. That doesn't mean that's not going to happen. Okay, but God had to do this first. There's a twofold prophecy about the Messiah. Isaiah 53, the entire chapter, Isaiah chapter 53, is about who Yeshua was, why he had to come, and the Jews to this day still don't understand it. They think it's all about them. Now, I prove through Hebrew linguistics, it can't be about a group of people, because Hebrew is a very specific language. It's either singular, plural, masculine, or feminine. There's not a whole lot of ambiguity there. And the whole entire chapter is written about an individual, not a group of people. So when Jews say, oh, that's about us, we're the suffering servants, we're the ones that, yeah, I know. We've suffered. Jews have suffered. But this is about someone who comes to stand in our place, okay, and becomes the kinsman redeemer, the propitiation for the sins of all mankind, the one who buys us back, like a mafia thing. Like, you know how the mafia goes, okay, well, I'll buy your debt, I'll take care of everything, I'll get rid of your enemies, I'll punch them out, and now you belong to me. Okay, so it's kind of like that sort of thing happening on a higher level. And who's the bully? The God of this world. And what does he demand in terms of payment? Blood. He is the one who wants the blood. He is the carnivorous, bloodthirsty God. And that's what all the blood sacrifices, they go to him. Why? Because he's reptilian, and the reptilians feed off of human life force, and the life is in the blood. Leviticus says the life force is in the blood. So that's why children have been sacrificed, blood sacrifices, animal sacrifices. But then Yeshua came along and says, yeah, I'm going to be the sacrifice, going to end all sacrifices. Nobody's going to trump his blood. Why? Because he's a demigod. Like you said, he was the Son of God. He was half man, half God. Son of man, Son of God. He had DNA that nobody else had. He had special blood. He had the blood that wipes away all the sins. And how do we know that? Because there's thousands, millions of people who have been saved by that, who have experienced miracles in their body, who have been healed of horrible diseases. And doctors have even said, oh, we have no cure. And then Jesus comes in and all of a sudden saves them. Okay. I mean, I'm one of those people. So it's supernatural. So his blood trumps all the other blood. And that's when Christians, for so many years, Christians says, oh, he had to pay the price for the Father. It's like, why does the Father need blood? That's what I was asking for years, because I was kind of like, even though I was a Jew for Jesus, I don't follow a lot of Christian stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that comes out of the Church of Rome that is mixed up with all this, first of all, anti-Semitism and paganism, and just like mixed up counterfeit beliefs that are not true. They think that, a lot of them think that his blood was for the Father in heaven. The Father in heaven doesn't need blood. He doesn't need blood. It's the God of this world that we're all held captive. We're all hostage. We're all in bondage to this matrix, this whole thing that we live under. Okay. And even the cycles of reincarnation are somehow put in charge of the God of this world, this reptilian thing, who uses us like a human farm to harvest our soul energy. That's why the soul has to be hidden in Christ, because when you're a believer, then the promises of God are on you. It's a covenant, and it's not something, this is another thing, is religion versus what God did. It's not about religion, because the religion says you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do it this way, you got to do it that way. If you don't do it this way, then you're out. He's not about religion. He's about relationship. He's established. He's like, you're an attorney. You're a judge. I'm a legal assistant. I used to be a legal assistant. So you understand the legal ground here. He is the advocate. Okay. He is the advocate of our souls. And the God of this world, who is Lucifer, Satan, is the accuser. He is the prosecutor. He wants to put us all on trial, okay, and rip us apart. And then the advocate comes and stands in between us and him and says, no, he's now covered. She's now covered by me, so that the Father in heaven only sees the fact that we are under Christ. We are hidden in our soul. Our life is hidden in Christ, which is very profound, because it means that the enemy can't see it. He can't touch it. Okay. And as you know, I've said this to you before when we talked last time, there are worse things than death. And October 7th was an example of that. Okay. What was done to Israelis just for being Israelis, just for being Jewish. It was totally like random violent acts. I have to say this because there's so much propaganda out there that is twisting, and this is the twisted Leviathan spirit, okay, that is behind the Antichrist. So there's a spirit behind this Antichrist, and it's a counterfeit spirit that twists. It's like narcissism. So psychologically, if you come against a narcissist, what do? They twist everything to hide their own. They don't want to take responsibility for their own mistakes, so they blame you. Okay, so it's like kicking up a bunch of dust in your face, and all you're seeing is the accusations that are coming from this person or of this group saying, oh, you did this, you did that, you did this. And what do we know from World War II? Hitler, Saul Alinsky, they all said, tell a lie often enough and people will believe it as truth. This is the end time deception. Jesus said the number one sign that's going to happen before he returns is mass deception, that it's going to be a global deception. 2/3 of the world are going to buy into this counterfeit Messiah, this end time Antichrist. 1/3 isn't. And he's going to be worse than Hitler, according to the prophecies. He's going to do beheadings. Who does beheadings? The description of the Antichrist is that he beheads people. Who does that? There's only one group on this planet that is still to this day doing beheadings. Alfred?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to follow it, everything. So what you're saying, in essence, is that the Hebrews are a Christic group that are now coming into Christ consciousness.
You could
That
say
are
that.
destined to come into Christ consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what you're saying, along with the rest of the planet. And we're down to a final battle of Christ versus Antichrist.
Yes.
And
Which happens over Israel,
yeah.
over
And,
Zion.
and so, because now I had come to the point of perceiving Israel as an Antichrist nation. I'm honestly sharing that with you now.
I understand why you feel that way. I do. I understand why people feel that way. And that, again, you even saying that is part of this prophecy coming true.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That's exactly what was predicted to happen, is that the whole world goes against Israel, thinks Israel is the bad guy, the enemy, the problem. Okay. And it even goes, I mean, right now America is helping them. But there's a level of this prophecy that says they end up standing on their own.
oh,
Nobody helps
okay.
them, which
Let
means that
me,
America is out of the
yeah,
picture.
let me deconstruct this particular act, since you brought up the law, right?
Sure.
I'm a judge on what's called a tribunal of conscience. And a tribunal of conscience, it was like the tribunal of conscience in London against the Vietnam War. These are when people from all over the planet get together to where war crimes or genocide or crimes against humanity are being
Yeah.
carried out, and the tribunals are, the civil courts are ignoring it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
here is the headline. Tribunal issues writ against Israel and USA for AI genocide weapons, artificial intelligence weapons. And this is based upon Israeli journalist reports from Israel that reported that the IDF began using these artificial intelligence weapons that would take a take a terrorist and then follow the terrorist home and would not attack the terrorist until it was home, so then would destroy the entire family of the terrorist, 15 people, plus the building that the terrorist lived in. And the reason why the Gaza Strip is totally destroyed is because they use these AI genocide weapons. And there's been a complete revulsion, both at the UN and in the US against the AI. And I've written books against the AI because it is Antichrist. We are under an AI invasion now. And
I
our
agree.
tribunal ordered the UN General Assembly to undertake a Holy Land Peace and Reconciliation Restorative Justice Program for the traditional indigenous, declaring the 1917 Balfour Declaration null and void. Because I went back to the 1917 declaration, the Balfour Declaration, and there, Lionel Rothschild, what he did is he used his money to pay off the war debt, the World War I war debt of the UK, and then the British gave over the Holy Land to Israel. So it was like, and Lord, and then there's these other analysts that say that Lionel Rothschild is just a reptilian soul that incarnated in a human Jewish body. You follow what I'm saying? So it's very complex. It's not
I
a general
understand.
spiritual body. So that's why we ended up there. So it's kind of very, very, very complex, but that
I agree. It
what
is
what
complex.
Israel has carried out is it took October 7th and it took it and it 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 not only took it in spades, it like carried out a super genocide based on what happened there on October 7th, which was minuscule compared to what Israel has done since October 7th, because they have almost guaranteed you now have Iran and you have Russia and China talking about nuclear holocausts, talking about using nuclear weapons. In other words, Russia is now threatening Israel's ally and Israel with nuclear weapons. And 705,000 years ago, the other verdant planet in the solar system, Tiamat, was turned into the asteroid belt in a reptilian human nuclear war. And so you could say that it's this escalation that Israel did, where they did a super escalation from October 7th, which wasn't that bad. They went,
Oh, Alfred, I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with that last statement.
why do you think it was that
I
bad?
understand everything you're saying and even how it's perceived. I really do. Okay. But this is what's being missed in the world media. You know, when the first casualty of war is the truth.
Okay.
So when war was waged on Israel, that was an outside attack. That was October 7th was a game changer. That began World War III. Okay. That's and it's just a matter of this, that, and the other thing that's going to, world wars, they don't have to last for decades. They can be fought and done in 5 years, maybe. Okay. So this is the beginning of this World War III, which the Bible calls the War of Gog and Magog. So the entities who attacked Israel were Hamas and the Palestinians. They were working together. Okay. Now Israel, and I have seen this, and it's very, very disturbing to see this. Okay. And maybe you should see some. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but there's videos, okay, that they documented of what they did to the Israelis on October 7th. They actually bragged about it. They went to their parents and they said, "Look, mom, look, dad, look, I killed 10 Israelis. Look, I raped the Israeli woman in front of her children. Look what I did. Look, I put a baby in the oven and I burned them." And then you know what else they did? They took hostages. Okay, they took over 200 hostages, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
they and you know what they did to this one woman? After they raped her and killed her children, they starved her for 3 days, and then they fed her a plate of meat. And after she ate the plate of meat, they said, "That was your child."
yeah, yeah,
Okay?
yeah, yeah, but
So
wait,
this is like
hold on.
horrific stuff.
I watched an interview with Netanyahu last night, okay? And I've been doing, because uh I I'm 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 from the counterculture, and
Yeah.
I'm from investigating what's called false flags. And there's a lot of literature that talks about October 7th being a false flag. It was a setup, okay? Now just listen to this. I know you might want to resist it.
No, I understand
No,
the
no, no,
term false
listen,
flag.
just listen to this.
Okay.
Because the AI artificial fences between the zone that Hamas ruled and the zone of Israel mysteriously went down on October 7th. And that's why those attacks were allowed. And the IDF controls those fences. And so, the theory, that analysis is that if it was a false flag, the IDF, it was elements within the IDF set up the false flag such that you would have a scenario with a lot of, quote, scary stuff that would scare civilians and families. And so they would say, revenge, 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 so that then you could come in and clear the Gaza corridor and clear it up and set it up for the paving of uh, the Gaza Strip, and for the ejection of all the Palestinians, and for their uh, and for their shipping out of all, either genocide of all Palestinians, or for their shipping out, which is a violation of the International Criminal Court statute, to destinations around the world, i.e., it was a very sophisticated false flag to get rid of all the Palestinians in Israel and have an Israel takeover. See, I'm getting down to, you have to go further down in to that. My wife and I were invited a number of years ago to go down to Paradise Island, and it was a yoga camp. And when we in the Bahamas, and when we got to that yoga camp, everybody in the yoga camp were members of the IDF. Okay. And wow, I was surprised. And then the head of it, it was right when Hamas went into power and was put into power by the Israelis. And then the head of that yoga camp, who was an officer in the IDF, kept on saying to us, isn't it great that Hamas went into thing, and that Hamas was actually created by the Israelis. So we've been following this very, very deeply for many years. And so we see chess moves within chess moves. Okay. And so
I
that's the
understand.
level at which I am coming.
I
And,
understand.
and, uh, you know, so, uh, uh, anyway, it is it's just very, very deep,
Yes.
this. And so I I'm willing to go deep and to say, okay, let's look at the Hebrews as potentially a Christic race that have the potential to have Christ consciousness, and that the prophecies are that they will eventually come into Christ consciousness and will recognize Yeshua as the Messiah after this period that we're going through. And, you know, so I'm willing to step back. But boy, we, uh, we have to look at October 7th as a potential false flag, and at Israel having itself having been infiltrated by people who are double actors or some pretty evil Israelis. That's all I have to say. Over to you, and I have one further question. I know that we've been at it now for about an hour and a half, so this will be my final question. But
Go ahead.
over
Oh,
to
you want me
you.
to respond to this first? Okay. Well, first of all, I understand what you're saying and I know where you're coming from. I accept what you're saying, but there's some missing pieces. Maybe I could help. All right. So, one, you're right. They, okay. So, according to the history from the 1973 war, okay, what came out of that were these agreements. Okay. And that's, I think, what you were referring to when they created Hamas, because the the Egyptians didn't want it. The Jordanians didn't want it. They said to the Israelis, "You deal with them." So they were kind of like, this area, and it's an ancient piece. Remember, I told you earlier, the Philistines used to rule over that whole Gaza Strip,
Yeah.
and they were giants. Let's not forget the famous Bible story of David and Goliath. I mean, it goes back to then. Who was Goliath? Goliath was a giant. He was a Philistine. This was the Gaza. This is this land that we're talking about. Israel never wanted to rule over it. They were put in charge of managing it. According to the UN Charter of 1947, there was written into it was a two-state solution. That piece they were going to manage, not rule. A little different, but you being an attorney, you know the
Yeah, yeah,
difference of
yeah.
those words. Okay, so they made an agreement, and this is all legal agreements. You can look them up, between the Egyptians and the Jordanians, that they were going to manage it, but they wanted to give them their own sense of, you know, independence and let them do their own thing while they were overseeing it. Okay, it was sort of like they were like a subsidiary in like a big corporation, if you want to look at it that way, and Israel being is the Israeli government being the big corporation. So they weren't, and believe me, and I know this for a fact, okay, on the ground through Israelis, they nobody cares like the Israelis do about these people. There's no army on the face of this earth, okay, and that includes us Americans, that that takes care of their enemies the way they do. They warn them when they're ready to attack. They send them those flyers out of the helicopters. They put emails out. They call them because they know, and Hamas knows this about Israelis, that they would never attack uh, children and hospitals and sick people, because that's just not in the morality of the IDF.
Yeah, but they but
So
they
what did
did
the Hamas do?
but they did violate it when they used the artificial intelligence weapons. That's my point.
Well, let me get to that. Let's
Yeah,
because there's a gray area there. It's
yeah,
not black and white. It's not cut and dry,
yeah,
because it's like AI is nebulous. You
yeah,
know, we are existing because we're talking on this connection here, which is
yeah,
part of artificial intelligence. We're on social media. Things
yeah.
get manipulated, pictures get manipulated, words get manipulated. So, you know, but there's a reason for all this confusion, because that's what happens at wartime. The first casualty is the truth, and kick up enough dust and throw it out there so people can't see which is which and who is who. All right.
Mm,
So that's number one. But going back to the rulership, okay, they were put in charge of managing it, but they didn't want to manage it. They wanted them to have their own space. They take care of them. They bring them into hospitals. So they know that Hamas hides behind children, behind women, behind hospitals, okay? And it's a fact. I mean, they've rooted them out. They have underground tunnels under the hospitals. They operate in mosques. They operate, you know, they hide behind women and children because they know that Israelis are not going to go after women and children, and they sidestep them. So and the whole underground, and this is also ancient, because what happened to those giants? What happened to them? They went underground. Okay. And there was rumor, I can't confirm or deny the veracity of this story, but I just want to insert it in there, that during the war, that that giants surfaced from time to time because they were underground. Okay, so maybe these ancient, I don't say, maybe the demonic entities that are fueling this is exactly what they did. Okay, first of all, you have to look at what they did, how they did it. Okay, it's not just like, okay, let's send a missile and let's just like attack a bunch of people and wipe out a whole town. They went in and they raped and they mutilated and they did all this cannibalistic stuff, and they dragged bodies through the town of God, through Gaza, with the Palestinians working with them, cheering, oh, that they have a dead Israeli on their motorbike, or they just raped this woman and they cut their Achilles heel so that they couldn't run away while they were raping them. Okay, I mean, the most horrific, nightmarish stuff they did, all right, which hasn't been seen or done since the Nazi German Holocaust on the Jews. That's the kind of stuff, and to be fair, from my what I looked at, what I saw, is even worse than that, because the Nazis, they threw them all in gas chambers. Yes, they starved them to death. They did some horrible things. That was genocide, outright and admitted. What Israel is doing to defend themselves is not genocide. It is defense. What they want, what the intention is, and they say it. It's not a secret. It's not even hiding in the shadows. Every day you can go to the Iranian parliament and listen to them chant, death to Israel, death to America. We are, there's the big Satan and the little Satan. They want to wipe us. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. The whole chant from the river to the sea, which most of them in these universities don't even know what river and what sea, okay, is code name. Okay, it's dog whistle politics for let's genocide the Jews off the land of Israel and take the land of Israel.
Okay,
They want to genocide the Jews.
and what is the origin of that? Where is that sourced? Does it go back to Lucifer, Satan? Is that is that is that where it is? are Lucifer and Satan running Iran so that it's antichristic? Is that what is going on?
You could say that. I mean, all of this goes back to Lucifer and Satan, but specifically, unlike, unlike God, who can be omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, Satan is not. He cannot be in all places at the same time. So he has to use his princes, his archdemons, and his lower demons to do his bidding. Okay, and possession, okay, of what they're calling now containers. Okay, the Bible calls us vessels. Vessel, container, it's like a thesaurus word, right? So what they told the whistleblowers was that the reptilians look at us as containers. They can come in and take over. That is the whole idea of why Yeshua had to come, is to save us from that. He wants to dwell in us. He wants us to be his temple. Okay, so since that temple got destroyed in 70 AD, we became the temple of God. All right, and they're going to build a third temple. This is the key prophecy here. This is how you're going to know who this final Antichrist will be, because the prophecy is very clear that he helps them build this third temple. And he sets himself in Jerusalem, and he sets himself up as the God that needs to be worshipped. He stops the animal sacrifices, okay, and then he declares them to worship him, and anyone who doesn't, they all get beheaded. The persecution is worse than the Holocaust. It says 2/3 of Israel perishes at the hands of this Antichrist, who comes out of the revived Roman Empire, who sets himself up in the temple, who makes peace between. He is the one that we have to watch for this war to unfold and for it to end. He ends the war. Okay, it says in Daniel 9, he draws up a peace treaty between Israel and her enemies. And who are the enemies? The 10 nations that the Bible lists are a coalition that wage war against Israel, and Persia leads them. So Persia is Iran, who funds Hamas and Hezbollah and Daesh and ISIS. And so you have Persia, Turkey, Yemen, Sudan, which is ancient Kush in the Bible, Lebanon, Libya, Syria, okay? And Russia is somehow involved. The Bible is very clear about the barbarians and the Scythians and how they existed around the Caucasus mountains. Well, that's southern Iran, and the Romans even feared them. They were so awful. And the stuff that they did back then
why
is
would
exactly what they're doing now.
why would the leader of that group of nations have an interest in building the third temple? I don't understand.
Okay, all right, no, great question. So basically the temple right now is all ready to be built. So the Temple Institute of Jerusalem has all the materials right according to the whole script in the Bible of the materials, the sizes, the stones, everything. They have all the money, they have everything they need to erect this temple. The only thing they don't have is the Muslims on board. Okay, it's the Muslims and it's the Dome of the Rock, it's the Al-Aqsa Mosque that is blocking at the moment this temple from being rebuilt into the third
Why
end
is
time.
the Al-Aqsa Mosque blocking the third temple?
Well, two reasons. One, location. Okay.
Oh, because they're both on the same spot?
Correct. And the Al-Aqsa Mosque was built at the site of the old temple to block so you have to look at the history here and look at when. Okay, so the Ottoman Empire, we talked about the Roman Empire. Let's talk about the Ottoman Empire, because this is another key piece. History repeats itself and things come back and go full circle. And who is the Ottoman Empire? Turkey. Okay, so the Bible talks about Magog, the land of Gog and Magog. Now I believe Gog was a giant. Gog is a title, not a piece of land. The war of Gog and Magog is a leader of the land of Magog. And ancient maps show that the land of Magog, Tubal, which became Istanbul, is Turkey. And then what's next to it is Russia. So you have this confluence of Turks and Russians, and we know the Russians are players, you even said so yourself, that are involved in this end time war against Israel. Russia and Iran are in bed. So when Iran attacks Israel, Russia is not going to go against Iran. And first of all, let me just be clear here about Russia. Russia doesn't care about the religious piece. The Iranians it's a religious war. The 10 coalitions are all Islamic nations that are run by theocrats. Okay, and that is how Turkey has now become. You and I have lived, and we remember, people used to go vacation in Turkey. It was a cool place to go. They were totally secular. So was Iran. Iran was secular. Women wore bikinis. People went on vacations. People had a good time. Not anymore, because it's been taken over by Islamic radical Muslims. Okay, and let's not forget, in the world of Islam, all right, they're divided between the Sunnis and the Shias, which is why Iran and Saudi Arabia are arch enemies. Now, you mentioned the prince, Salman. He wears all the garb only because of, it's like royalty protocol. He's really secular. He's not religious. They want to rule just like the Roman Empire. Okay, and let's not forget the root of how they got into power in the first place. The Church of Rome, and I know this is very, they might even kill me for saying this, but I've written it and I published it and it's in my book and I prove it based on history. The facts, okay, is that the Church of Rome helped to create Islam. Okay, the Pope wanted Jerusalem. Let's not forget the intentions here is to control Jerusalem.
That is being acknowledged, that that Christianity, the Vatican, created Islam.
Yes, and isn't it interesting? Thank you for acknowledging that. Isn't it interesting that today's Pope, okay, Francis, has created Chrislam? Okay, he did that. Those are his words. And now he allows, and every day, as you and I speak right now, the Muslims are invited into the Vatican, St. Peter's Cathedral, and they get on their prayer mats and they pray 3 times a day with their butts in the air facing Mecca and their butts facing Jerusalem. So why is Jerusalem such a big thing to them? It's not the number one sacred spot for Islam. Mecca is. Jerusalem comes in second, but it's a stronghold. And if you understand the history of how they went to go, the Ottoman Empire and what they used, so when so the Pope, let me go back to this. So the Pope in around 700 AD, 750 AD, in that era, wanted to take Jerusalem. So he sent his monks, okay, and all the monks were literate. They were all scribes. They knew how to read and write. And they sent his monks to Muhammad. And Muhammad was a known warrior because he came out of a prominent warrior caste family. Okay, so that he wanted to use him, and they sent the monks to groom him, basically, to take Jerusalem for Rome. And they did. They groomed him, and he took Jerusalem, but he didn't give it to Rome. Okay, so you talk about double agents and betrayals and stuff like that. He kept it for himself. And so then we have, the Arabian stuff and all this history fighting Jerusalem. There's no place on this planet that has been fought over more than Jerusalem. Okay, and why is that? That's what people have to ask. Why? Because it belongs to this God of Israel. Jerusalem is an ancient space portal, and every empire wants to control it. Okay, and the God of Israel gets the last word in this battle. That is who returns at the end. And it says very, very clearly that Israel ends up standing alone. all the nations of the world go against Israel. And so you have two wars here. There's like World War III, which are these 10 nations that I've already listed that go against Israel, which has begun through the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. Then there was an actual attack from Iran to Israel, that those missiles that all got thwarted by the Iron Dome, the technologies. Why? I mean, I interrupted myself. Let me finish what I was trying to tell you. Why is Russia involved? Russia doesn't care about religion. Russia cares about resources. Russia cares about technology. And why do they want a piece of Israel? Why are they siding with Israel's enemies? Because Israel is the pioneers, the leaders, the inventors, the innovators of most of the world's technologies. Okay, and that's a fact. The cell phone, the semiconductors, the little microchips, the Iron Dome technology, which now the UK has, we helped fund it. We're partners with them. They're allies in the Middle East. But it does say in the prophecy that in the end time, at the very end, America isn't even involved. They stand alone. Right now, they have allies because it hasn't developed yet. But when you see someone emerge that comes out of these countries, that the Vatican is putting their stamp of approval on this man and working together with this. And then there's also no coincidence that the Vatican owns a piece of real estate in Jerusalem. So that's their foot in the door there. Okay, that's their legal ground. They own a piece of David's tomb. All right. So this individual, who we call the Biblical AntiChrist, emerges, according to Daniel, out of this end time war and makes peace. It's a 7-year peace treaty between Israel and all of her enemies, all 10 of those, the caliphate, the Islamic nations that go against Israel, that want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. This is a competing religious thing. They want the whole world to be Islamic. Okay, the real war on women comes from these Islamics, which is why all the Iranians the other day, a few days ago, when the president died in this helicopter crash in that fog storm, they were cheering, they were celebrating, they were even waving Israeli flags because he's brutal. Plus, he was the one who put you talk about war crimes, what he did to the women of Iran and continues to do. Why? Because they don't wear the burqa, or they don't do this right, or they don't it's nut making. Okay, so women have no freedom, absolutely none. That is the real war on women, is the Islamic regime. And all of these 10 nations are radical Islam. They're not the secular ones. Like I told you, the Saudis are not part of this. Okay, the Jordanians are not part. In fact, it says that the Israelis end up running to Jordan for refuge to get away from the Antichrist when he comes and sets himself up as God to be worshipped in this third end time temple in Jerusalem. He helps them get it together. They can't get it together. Remember that story I was telling you about, how Daniel was hitting these hard heavens? He couldn't get the message through until they restrained the prince. That's what this is about. This temple is not going to get built until someone comes along who is that Prince of Persia type Antichrist spirit that's going to make a deal. Okay, and he's going to end the war, and the Israelis are going to go, he's on our side, he's for us. And then he's going to let them build this temple, which they're chomping at the bits to build. And once you see that go up, it's like countdown, because it's very, very, the prophecy couldn't be more specific in terms of days and months and weeks and years. Suffice to say, it's 7 years. So it's what in Hebrew we call it a Shemitah, which is like 7 years. And then after that, you rest. When that's over, that's it. Then Armageddon is not the World War III. Armageddon is that final battle on the field of Megiddo in Jerusalem. So that's why it's called Armageddon. Har means mount. Megiddo means field of blood. Here we go with the blood again. And the reason why they called it that is because in ancient times, they used to meet there. Okay. And that's where they fought it out. Like, guerrilla warfare, with their horses and stuff. And it became a field of blood. So they called it, and so Armageddon, what really had that final battle is separate from World War III. World War III happens, Antichrist emerges out of it with a peace treaty between the Islamic nations and Israel. They make peace. They literally live in peace for a little while. 3.5 years, it says. 3.5 years, total peace. Everyone's happy. This guy, he becomes what people, okay, so think of Obama. I think of Obama because Obama was a prelude, like the spirit of, and a lot of people that you have mentioned as well, have the spirit of Antichrist. They talk well. They're so, they have this magnetism. They're charismatic. People love them. They win the world over. That's what this guy is going to be. He has that charm. And people, and then it also says that he has the power to pull down fire from heaven. Okay, Revelation 13. He pulls it, and what is that? That's alien technology. Okay, so when you get Russia and China involved in this, first of all, Russia hates, they hate Islam. Okay, they're always fighting against the Muslims. The Chinese, they're atheists. They hate all religion, and they kill people for anybody, any kind of religion. They hate that. They're in it not because of the religious war, as the 10 caliphate are. They're in it because of the technology and the resources that Israel has. They want the technology. So Israel has a lot of secret tech, a lot of space tech. And this is the reason why Chaim Eshed came out in 2020 and said, yeah, we're in working agreements with the Galactic Federation and with America too. But the Galactic Federation says that the world is not ready for them to know who they are. They wanted to come out in 2015. Okay. And they said no. So there is much more here than meets the eye that is being protected. And why is that? Because it's almost like what happened in the past. You just got to go back into the past. It's like the past is prologue. So the Israelis had this really sophisticated, exotic piece of technology we call the Ark of the Covenant. Okay. And the enemies wanted it. So they stole it from them, right? You know that story. It's in the Bible. And then they started coming down with cancerous boils and sores, and people were dying. And they said, we better give it back to them because it's almost like we're cursed, right? That's what it says in the Bible. So they handed it back to Israel. They said, here, this is yours. You have it because enough people have died. We stole it. We're sorry, but here, you can have it back. So think of that in modern times. They are sitting on exotic technology. They're working with aliens. They're working with extraterrestrials. So of course, Russia and China want to have their finger in that pie. All right. And Israel, the land itself, okay, this ancient land is full of portals. I prove this in my second book, Who is God, because of these stories in the Bible and the actual biblical vernacular. Take Elijah, for example. Now, he's one of the 2 witnesses that returned. According to the prophecy, God sends back 2 witnesses in this end time, in that 7-year, what they call the 7-year tribulation period, or the time of Jacob's troubles. Same thing. So remember, Jacob became Israel. So the time of Jacob's troubles is all about Israel. And it's a 7-year period that the Antichrist rules. And nothing you and I can say or do can change that. It's written in, and it's going to happen, and it's going to happen for a bigger purpose, all right? To prove to the universe, not just this world, not just us, not just our nations, it's going to prove to the whole universe who the God of the universe, who the King of the universe is, because he's going to let this whole thing play out so that he can come in and save everybody. And he promises in the end that all of it, even though they may die, and they will, it says 2/3 are going to perish. 1/3 remains, And they are the ones that actually see him coming, because they say, and this is written in both the Old and the New. So when you have an Old Testament scripture and a New Testament scripture that match, it's kind of like confirmation. And it says that they will see the Lord coming in the air with all the horses of heaven, and they will mourn on whom they pierced. They will mourn and grieve as they see him coming, for who they have pierced. So pierced is crucified. So how, and I say this to Christians all the time, how is that possible? Okay, when all of them who watched him get crucified were dead 2,000 years ago. Well, there's only one answer to that, and they were all just like Ezekiel 37. It's the reincarnation of ancient Israel. This is the reincarnation of all those people that are put back on the earth at this end time to see this whole thing get resolved. Okay? And just because you and I count days the way we do doesn't mean that the God of Israel does, because he tells us, and this is what my sixth book is about, the time manipulations and time travel and all this. He said, and he gives it to us. He says it. It's like the primer is right there in the Torah. It says, a day is like 1,000 years unto the Lord, and 1,000 years is like a day. That's time travel. Okay, so let's talk about 3 days. 3 days. So this is a common theme in the Bible, right? Jesus died on the cross and he rose 3 days later. So if 1,000 years is like a day, and we're in 2024, we're in technically the 3rd day, because we've already completed 2,000 years, which are 2 days. So we are at the very beginning, like five minutes after midnight on day 3. So when he rose, I have all this in my second book, is that why did he rise before the sun came up? Because the sun is dying. The sun is worshipped as like a pagan god. It's called a counterfeit sun. And Malachi 5 says, the 4:2 says, he is the son of righteousness who comes with healing in his wings. And it says sun, S-U-N, but S-O-N. And righteousness is the Melchizedek, who is this ancient king of righteousness. So he and Yeshua are one and the same, in my opinion, and I prove this based on the scriptures. But he returns and he becomes, it says, the light of the world, meaning there's no more darkness. That means we don't even need the sun anymore. The sun is dying. Okay, the sun is falling apart. Just look at it. Every day, every other day, there's a solar flare, coronal mass ejections. It's heating up the planet. That's what the global warming is about, because there's this other system that's coming in and perturbing things. And that's why the Lord promises when he returns to recreate the heavens and the earth, because this old system isn't working anymore. So when he returns, it says they're on the planet, they're in the land of Israel, and they look upon him and they mourn upon whom they pierced, and they repent and they get taken. So the rapture happens at the end, because it says the dead in Christ rise first. Where are they rising from? Inside the earth. So when people die, they go to the heaven inside the earth. And when he comes, he collects them. He harvests them inside the earth, and those who are on the surface get taken, and they're raptured up, and the whole earth gets changed. And then, becomes the transition, however long that takes, to this millennial reign. And that's what the end of the Bible is all about. Revelation 21, the city of heaven comes out of the heavens, which to me is described like some phantasmagorical mothership. Those are my words, not Bible words, but it says that there's 12 gates. Each one of those gates are named after the 12 blessed tribes of Israel. There's one tribe that got cursed, Dan, he's not involved. And then the Lord sits in the middle on a throne and rules over the whole planet with an iron rod. And there's no more, and everyone gets restored. The humans get restored. They live to be 1,000 again. He will restore the bodies to the original image and likeness of God, these glory bodies that live to be 1,000. It says so, and he rules for 1,000 years. And there's no more of this stuff that we are dealing with. There's no more conflict and sorrow and tears and pain, and animals and humans live together without threat of being eaten. That's the curse. He removes the curse. So this end time battle, this end game that we're heading into, is all about him, and it's all about his portal, and it's all about his people. He's going to save. I mean, it's open to the whole world. It's not just Jew. The whole idea was that the Jews were supposed to help heal the world and help save the world, and that's Yeshua's mission, is to save everybody.
Wow.
So it's really a good news message in the
Right.
end. It's just stuff we have to go through. And like I said before, there's worse things than death. So you die, you get resurrected into this heaven on earth that comes.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you had some slides that explain some of this. Would you like to show them?
The slides. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, we got talking, you and I, boy, we can talk. Let me
Because you have taken us. Wow, there we go.
okay. So if you see, I was telling you about the that vision. This is the statue. This is in the book of Daniel, and this tells us who all these the whole cast of characters are that I was telling you about. And the
Right.
iron mixed with clay is the revived Roman Empire, who are all Islamic theocracies right
Wow.
now on the planet as we speak. They've already been established. I mean, you and I have lived through watching Turkey go from secular to Islamic. Erdogan wants to be the head of the caliphate. In fact, here's another fun fact. The Muslim Brotherhood, remember them during the times of Obama? That was who he went to go talk to in the Egyptian temple, remember? His first international trip out of America, he went to go talk to the Muslim Brotherhood. But Egypt has since um, made it illegal for the Muslim Brotherhood to meet in Egypt. So now they meet in Turkey. So Erdogan is technically the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, and also Jordan. The Muslim
Well,
Brotherhood is not allowed to meet in Jordan either. Again, Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia are not involved in this. But this is the slide that I was telling you about, these 12 um, events that are prophesied, that basically come right out of the mouth of Jesus. When the disciples said to him, what should we look for when you return? And this is all that he said. So basically, the number one thing is deception, religious deception, cults, political deceptions. We are living through that. And then, of course, the war, the violence, the murder, food scarcities, because of what's happening on the planet with the earth changes and the floods and losing crops and fires and stuff. The pandemics. There's another pandemic coming that's going to be like 10 times worse than COVID. uh, and also the persecution, the people hating God and being despondent and losing faith, and of course the solar flares. We're seeing this almost daily: seismic activity, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, global fires, smoke, um, near Earth objects, comets and asteroids, meteorites, and these are all signs of the heavens that come from the Nemesis Nibiru system intersecting in our solar system. Hurricanes and typhoons, ocean death. The Bible talks about 1/3 of the oceans die because of this asteroid that ends up hitting the earth, and it's called wormwood, which means bitterness, and it causes 1/3 of the ocean life to die. And then, of course, water scarcity, like water to drink and grow crops with. And then the final one is this alien invasion that comes from inside the earth. Not a false flag invasion, not a government controlled thing, an actual descriptive creatures that come from inside the earth. That it says that people, when they see all these things coming, they're literally gonna, like, it says they will die from fear just from seeing what's coming upon the earth. So this is what is also called the tribulation period. And so here is, I put this together because this is when people want to look at prophecy, they have to look at Israel, which is God's time clock. And everything, and it's just like the word Zion. Like, where does the word Zion come from? Oh, you're a Zionist, or you're this, or you're that. It's like, it comes out of the Bible. It comes from the words of the Lord through these prophets. And he called that whole land Zion because it was his. So when people argue about who owns the land of Israel, he does. Okay. And he ends this war. He has the last word. So this is just some, more scripture about these prophecies, who all these people are, the cast of characters are in the end. And Mount Zion, there will be deliverance. This is his promise. The people of Jacob, who Jacob became Israel, the Israelis will possess the land that is theirs by inheritance. The people of Jacob, who is Israel, and of Joseph will be like fire. They will destroy the people of Esau, who are the Palestinians, as fire burns stubble. So it says, no descendant of Esau or Palestine will survive. This is the scripture, I, the Lord, have spoken. People from southern Judah will occupy Edom, which is Palestine, and parts of Jordan, which is like the West Bank, because they gave that to the Palestinians. The Palestinians own that piece, and they also have Gaza. Those from the western foothills will capture Philistia, who is Palestine. Israelites will possess the territory of Ephraim, the West Bank, and Samaria. The people of Benjamin will take Gilead, which is Jordan. The army of exiles from northern Israel will return and conquer Phoenicia, who is now we call Lebanon, as far north as Zarephath, Saraphond, who is also another word for Lebanon. The exiles from Jerusalem, who are in Sardis, who is Turkey, will capture the towns of the Negev, which is southern Israel, which is the kingdom of Judea, ancient kingdom of Judea. The victorious men of Jerusalem, who are now the IDF, will attack Edom, Palestine, and rule over the mountains of Esau, the Palestinian West Bank, and the Lord, Yeshua himself, will be king of the kingdom. You can't make this stuff up. This is what the prophecy says. And it seems to be following like a script. So that's all. And this slide basically is what I was telling you about the Caucasian Mountains, the Eurasian steppe, and who these ancient people are that was written into this the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, is the war of Gog and Magog, which is basically what I was telling you, how Turkey and Russia and Persia and the whole caliphate go against Israel. And they talk about the horrible works and acts of these barbarian and Scythians. And the stuff that they did in the past, they're doing again now. The beheadings, the rape, and there's going to be, unfortunately, I it's not over yet. There's going to be more of that. So, the Leviathan, let me see if I, so remember I was telling you about how do you know about which God is who? So Exodus 12:12 says this has to do with the punishment of the Egyptian gods, which tells us that there is a God that has the power to punish these smaller gods. And this is all this ancient stuff that was in the Sumerian tablets, and this is all this history is written into the walls of ancient Persia and Iran, and today's Iran, Iraq, who was called Babylon in the past. So, this is just history I'll show you. Okay, so you mentioned about Lucifer and the real alien invaders. Yes, that's Isaiah 14, as I was telling you about who Lucifer is, and Ezekiel 28. And this is kind of an interesting historical about how Jerusalem was taken over by all these empires. Okay, and then of course the Hamas proxy attack of ancient Persia, which it stays Iran, on October 7th. And they were funded, that's a fact. Same old story, history repeating itself. And here is a map that shows the original land that God gave to Israel. And those were the original borders. So it's been whittled down a lot. And this is proving who the Palestinians are and were, and how there were the 12 tribes of Israel, as well as they had there were 12 tribes of Ishmael. So when you look at the 12 tribes of Ishmael and you compare it to the 12 tribes of Israel, you understand these ancient battles, because they've been fighting for years. And this basically is about this new Jerusalem, which I call this mothership. And there's 12 levels to it, and it ends up on the earth. This is what I was telling you. It's has 12 gates, and how it's described, it's like this phantasmagorical, extraterrestrial, amazing piece of technology. So this is the hope. This happens at the end. And I'm just proving how all these ancient cultures all had the same symbolism. Israel adopted the six-pointed star for their flag, but that doesn't mean that it was always, they all used it in the past. I mean, they've demonized it, but it's so, and the solar flares, they're going to continue, because we have what's happening on the ground is happening with the simultaneous passing of this Nemesis Nibiru system that is intersecting in our solar system, causing perturbations on the sun and the whole entire solar system, and is going to cause earth changes and an eventual pole shift, which is in the book of Isaiah, where the Lord says he's literally going to turn the earth upside down, which is biblical vernacular for pole shift. Well, everything is going to change. All this stuff is going to get resolved. And we're just living through it. And this is another piece. Jerusalem is the burdensome stone. It's where everything began, and it's where it all ends. And this is just more scripture in the book of Zechariah. These are all these prophecies that we're watching them unfold. It was specific question. Get it? Gog and Magog, the end times, yes. The ancient gods. Okay. So it all really ends up with him, because he was given the crown. And it says that he has he's the King of Kings. He has the crown of crowns. He comes with 12 different crowns. And isn't it interesting that Jews, one thing they have kept tradition and they've never changed, is the prayer. Every single prayer begins with the same sentence. Blessed are you, O Lord, our God, King of the universe. So everybody, this is the end times war, is about who is this king? Who is this coming king? And who and what is his kingdom? And those who are believers, who have had the veil removed, will see that, and what we see now is just like a glimpse. It's like we don't see face to face. We see as if we're looking through a thick glass. So it's not 100% clarity yet, because we're living in this this battlefield. That's it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Well, this is all very it's very rich, and it's just very expansive. And now I understand the Hebrew people and the Hebrew nation as essentially a Christic, as potentially a Christic nation, and that we're going through that process now.
Mm-hmm.
And now I understand this.
Well, that's good. I'm glad I helped with that.
This has been a real this this segment that we have done has been very transformatory for me, and I'm looking forward that it'll be transformatory to all of our audience. So it's a real service that you are doing. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm happy to share what I can. I hope it made sense. There's a lot. Ah, here it is. I'm sorry. That's what I was looking for. One last thing here, and that was Chaim Eshed. So this is to be continued, because we have not heard the end of this yet. And disclosure will come out of Israel. That's my final statement, I guess.
You said disclosure, and then I didn't get the full sentence.
Well, what everyone is advocating for is full disclosure. And
Yes.
during the pandemic, this went sort of under the radar when Chaim Eshed came out in November and December of 2020 and said, yeah, we're in contact, we're in working agreements with the Galactic Federation, but the world isn't ready to know and understand about them yet. So if he was the first, and they wanted to disclose in 2015, but they were told not to. So somehow, through all the bumps and the grinds and the back and forth and the conflicts and the AI and I know, I was looking for this slide to show you who Leviathan is and how this spirit, this ancient spirit that is in the book of Job, described very so how he twists everything around. And that is why people have to really stay close to the Holy Spirit and ask for discernment, ask for the truth to be shown to them, because you have to get through this maze of manipulations. And here it is. Okay, so this is the spirit behind Hamas and behind the propaganda that comes out of Israel. So at the beginning, I was telling you how I lived there and how all the propaganda, it's like the eye of a storm. It's like a hurricane. You live in Israel, you see what's going on, you're pretty clear about certain things, not everything, but outside they get a completely different story because there's so much propaganda around, and it always has been. I mean, I was there in the 70s. Okay, I was there after the 70s. I was there from 1976 to like 1981. Okay, so that was like an era, and there was so much. I mean, I left from America, my friends thought, oh, everybody wears gas masks, and because they just see war, they don't see that there's like people on the ground. Everything is like, it's like a Western nation. It's kind of hidden in many ways because of this aspect, is that so much is swirling around them, and there's all this misunderstanding, miscommunications, outright lies and propaganda, narcissistic projections, blame shifting. Okay, and we have to see that. You have to see that whatever's going on that Israel is doing to defend their homeland from these attacks, you know, is it's not all about what they're doing. It's about what was done to them that has completely got overshadowed by, oh, Israel is there is no um, proof that they're not genociding the Palestinians. They're saving them. There's proof. There's videos. There's all kinds. I mean, all you have to do is go to their pages and watch what's going on. But the media has been used to propagate all these lies. And I'm not saying that Israel is perfect in everything that they're doing. I'm not negating the use of AI or any of that stuff. But I am just saying that if you're saying, oh, this one's using AI, that one's using AI, I mean, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And how are they using it? AI itself is neutral. Who is controlling it? Who is programming it makes it good or evil? Why? I want to address what you said about how they let the guard down, and that's how the October 7th attack came in. That is partly true, and that is a truth. Okay, that is a fact, because the Israel, and I know this, and this is out there, and people who are in the Israeli intelligence, the IDF people, have come out and actually said this, that they were trying to get rid of Netanyahu. Okay, and the Israeli generals, okay, were not listening to him. So when they were given these warnings that an attack was going to happen, that's where the spirit came in, twisted it around, and made them think that it was a false flag. But it actually was real. It really did happen. And it was planned underground, under the radar, with the funding of Iran. And we will not see, it's not over. You will see another level of this. And according to the end time prophecy, what happened on October 7th, which was horrific, the worst nightmare, will happen again on another level. Okay, because that's what the prophecy.
Could I ask you just kind of how do you see Netanyahu? Because people have said that from the founding, relations with the U.S. were fairly good, except for the last 10 years. And those were the 10 years that Netanyahu was in power when all this uncertainty came in. So do you see him as a positive figure or a negative figure?
Neither.
Neither.
Yeah, first of all, he is the longest reigning prime minister that Israel's had. So that needs to be said. He is a conservative. So, and this is another piece. I was trying to tell this to Michael Salla. He was just like, didn't get it. Okay. But you will. I know you will, because you're different. So here's the thing. When the enemy attacks, the enemy is going to attack when you're at your weakest, right?
Right.
Isn't that how enemies work? They wait for the weakness, for the weak link, and then they go and they attack. Well, Israel was probably the weakest it had been prior to October 7th. And here's why. And I wrote a whole thing about this in my first book, 4th edition, called The Reptilian Machiavellian Agenda. So the Machiavellian agenda is reptilian because it has to do with dividing and conquering. So first you got to divide, then you do the conquering. So what was happening on the ground in Israel prior to October 7th is they had division like no one has ever seen before in the land of Israel. One thing, and when I lived there, and one thing that was hallmark of Israelis was unity. You could come, what's unique about Israel is that Jews come from all over the world. You've got, Black Jews and Oriental Jews. There's people from Vietnam. There's people from Europe, everywhere. You name it, living in Israel under one banner. The Jewish homeland. They are unified, especially during wartime. There is so much, there's always been known for its unity. You follow? So what happened before October 7th was they lost that unity. They were more divided than ever before, politically and socially. The political divisions were something like no one's ever seen before there. Because you know that Israel is run like after the British there's a parliament. So they have all
Right.
these different parties. But so they had this whole thing. They were trying to unseat Netanyahu for years. They did. Then he came back. Then they did it again. Then he came back. And it's been all this back and forth, right? So that's the political thing. The social, there's this, the division was between running Israel as a theocracy. Okay, they want the rabbinical group wanted to rule is like the Sanhedrin, like it's like the past again, coming back. They wanted to rule Israel based on Jewish religion. And they wanted to make rules and laws based on the Jewish religion and based on like who can and they were throwing out, and I know people that this happened to here in Colorado, that they were thrown out of Israel for being Messianic Jews, for talking to other Israelis about Yeshua as a
Oh
Jew.
boy.
They were excommunicated and exiled and sent away because of this religious seat in the parliament that Netanyahu has always had their ear. Okay, and that's a fact. So people hated him because of that. All right. And
Right.
then there's this other group who were more secular. So when I was living in Israel, I mean, really, like, Israel has a lot of holidays, but most Israelis, they're not religious. They're just like, they're more Zionist, like in political, like nationalists, like, oh, they're there to protect their homeland. It's all about that. But the religious stuff, I don't know, they're a little confused because persecution makes people lose their faith. They go,
Yeah.
well, who's God? Where is God? Why did you let this happen to me? I don't know. All right, but I'll follow the holiday because it's a day off. Okay, so Israel has more holiday day offs than anything because of all the Jewish holidays. So what was happening was this rebellion on the ground against this religious right, and they were going secular. And then the LGBTQ plus people came in and started parading through the streets of Tel Aviv, and that was dividing people even more. The sexuality piece. Okay, and I don't have to tell you, it's here as well, but there they had never had it. But this is old, this is ancient, this stuff happened in the past, it's in the Old Testament. Okay, so when all this division starts happening socially, politically, spiritually, it erodes the strength and the power that Israel used to be, which was unified as the Jewish homeland. So that is where the divide and conquer comes in, because they were divided and they got conquered on that day, October 7th, because they were more divided than ever. But guess what? After October 7th, everybody's back together again, because there's nothing like war to unify a nation and a group of people. Okay, so that's why the enemy needs to be really careful, because now they're all kind of shored up their boundaries, and they're fighting a three-pronged war right now. They're not. It's not just Hamas versus Israel. It's Hezbollah. It's Iran. It's Syria. They are fighting on all these different fronts, which is why this is World War III.
Yeah.
Because all these nations get involved. 10 nations end up coming again, and they're already in agreement. Okay, if
Right.
you read the news, I don't have to tell you, Turkey, and the fact that this Iranian president died and people are celebrating. Okay, well, have your moment of celebration. That's great. He was an evil man. But it's like the 10-headed dragon. You lop off a head and 10 more grow back. So the guy
Right.
who's going to replace him isn't going to be any better. All right, because ancient Persia, today's Iran, it plays the leading role in this end time war, and they are leading this caliphate. They want to destroy Israel. They want to wipe the Jews. You talk about genocide. They say so. They're not hiding it. They want to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth. And
Right.
all their proxy groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, Daesh, ISIS, I mean, Hamas is just like ISIS. I mean, just because when Trump was in power and they brought down ISIS, they regrouped and called themselves something else. I mean, look at what's going on in Yemen. It's terrible. Look at what they're doing to women and children. It's people's worst nightmare. That's why I say there's worse things than death. So this we have not heard the end of this, but this spirit right here that I'm showing, Leviathan, the twisted serpent, okay, lives inside the earth and does all kinds of manipulations to communications. And people, and this is a Nephilim. This is an ancient Nephilim hybrid giant dragon spirit that is evil, and he twists communications. So people have to think, if they're going to look at this war, they have to say, well, where are you getting your sources? Just because somebody puts out articles and they say, oh, the Israelis are terrible, look what they're doing. Look at what was done to them. And look, and here's another thing. Look at what's going to happen. It's not just what's happened and what is happening and how they're fighting to survive. It's what's going to happen. It's what's coming, what's the next shoe to drop. So
Right.
that's all, and people just have to get really close with the Creator, God, and stay close, because one minute you're here, the next minute you're not, right? Tomorrow isn't promised to anyone. But the good news is that those who stay and abide in Christ, like yourself, it doesn't matter. You take your last breath, you're going to be in paradise with him. Okay? And the dead in Christ rise first. That's the prophecy. That's the promises of God. And if people have faith like you and your audience, they have to hold on to those promises. Just hold on to the faith, to your faith through all this. It's a weird time we're living through. It's not easy. It's unprecedented in many regards, but there's an expiration date. It's not going to go on forever.
It's so wonderful that you have joined us today and that you have shared all of this with us, because I think that you have really brought light into today's world, which is filled with so much confusion and so much darkness. So I really want to thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. Thanks for your open-mindedness and listening and understanding. I love you for that. God bless you.
Thank you. Yeah. So we've been on for 2 hours and almost 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I don't want to keep you. You can stop sharing whenever
Okay.
you
Stop share. Yep.
wish.
Got that.
Yeah,
Good.
here we are.
Okay.
But thank you so much. And
My pleasure.
I know that you mentioned that you have a new book coming out. Is that
Yes,
it?
hopefully by the end of this year. It's in the final edits, but it's called Heaven's Witness, and
Oh,
it's my 6th book in the series, and it's the connecting the dots to the Mazarot and the end time prophecies. Mazarot are it's the old astrology, the cosmology, the constellations, the
well,
stars.
yeah, we would love to have a feature interview with you, if that would work out with your schedule once it
Sure.
once it comes out.
Yeah, we can reconnect in the fall. I think I'll have a better
Sure.
idea.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And we'll be sharing this with you. We'll make a transcript, because I think that this is very important information. I've been sharing all of this information in many different communities, from my law school community to my exopolitics community to others. And I think that all of them have different perspectives, but all of them should know that we're building to this crescendo, and should have these tools to be able to interpret what's happening in a larger framework, especially since we have you know, all of these events happening on a daily and a semi-annual basis, and elections and events,
Oh, yes.
etc. So how can people follow your work and have access to your books, etc.?
Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo.com is my website, but my books are on Amazon worldwide. Um, so yeah, you can just look me up. I'm on Facebook, very active. I post a lot of videos and photos of the spaceships and the planets that we're seeing around the sun and the space telescopes. So I'm kind of focused on that lately, what's happening with the sun, the solar flares, the auroras, and which is affecting everybody. The geomagnetic storms, which is caused by the Nemesis Nibiru system. So um, it's interesting to watch all these prophecies unfolding right before our eyes. So I post that on Facebook so people could follow me there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, and thank you so much for generously sharing your world and your depth of knowledge, and let us, I mean, illuminating us today, which for me, I know was a total transformation. I had no idea, and now I have a better idea.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. Happy to help.
So,
Always good to talk to you, Alfred.
yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless. Thank you.